Deloitte Nigeria has described Nigeria's new voluntary asset and income declaration scheme as laudable. However, questions remain as to whether the country can deliver on its $1 billion tax generation target. We spoke to Yomi Olugbenro, a partner and the West African tax leader at Deloitte, about this. Take a look.
Essentially, the government just require voluntary, complete, and defendable information, credible information to be provided by the tax authority, so by the taxpayer. So it is expected that taxpayer will be honest and will provide all of the information that is required to to assess the amount of tax. But I must add that because of the volume of work that may be required, it may be very helpful for taxpayers to seek professional guidance from from their advisors to guide them through that process.
So 9 months amnesty window. What are the consequences of failing to embrace the scheme?
All right. So the finance minister did mention that prior to the launch of the scheme, there was a group of people that were set up to assist government in mining data, Project Lighthouse, they call it. And what the team practically did was to go through available databases, BVN, NCC, travel information, land registry, CAC documents, and all of those, just to be able to gather, the amount of information regarding those who potentially should pay taxes. And that amount of information with the government, it's a lot heavy, if indeed serious work has been done, as we were told. So if this scheme is over and defaulters refuse or fail to come through to take advantage of that, I think government is already armed with some very credible amount of information to be able to go in search of those individuals. Those who fail to come through will have lost the benefits of interest and penalties that is waived. They will have lost the benefits of the fact that the period would have been closed to audit and investigation. They also lose the benefit of having immunity from prosecution. So when this period is over, government would potentially just unleash all of its resources and arsenal to go in search of taxpayers who are defaulting. And I must add also that the global exchange of information that Nigeria is also already a signatory to, we kicked off effectively next year. We have the first set of global data and information around asset owners and investors around the world shared with governments of different nations. That information will then be available for the government to be able to identify individuals who ideally should be in the tax net and who are not. And that could just lead to some threat of prosecution and whistleblowing and all of those challenges that they may be exposed to.
Now, the biggest fear of the tax offenders is that the VAIDS could be a bait, that it could just be a strategy employed by the government to ensure that tax offenders come forward and then they get caught and then they face punitive measures. What steps do you think the government can take to ascertain or to engender trust and encourage tax offenders to actually come forward?
I agree absolutely with you. So I think the government needs to do a lot more in terms of sensitizing the public. I've seen the Minister of Finance, FRS chairman, and a number of state chairmen of State Internal Revenue Services trying to do some campaigns on Thursdays, tax Thursdays, as it's now being called. But a lot more still needs to be done. We need to reiterate to Nigerians and taxpayers the genuine intention of the government as far as the scheme is concerned. We also need to reiterate and clear some doubt and concerns around the willingness with which state governments, support the scheme. There are a number of people who still feel this is a lot more federal because the executive order was signed by the acting president. So a number of people still feel or still ask the question, would state tax authority fully and willingly support this? And I think we need to hear a lot more on the government side, trying to reiterate the support. If need be, they need to appear on a number of TV programs and radio programs where the chairman of FRS, for example, comes along with maybe one or two state chairmen, at intervals, just to reiterate the genuine intention of the government as far as this scheme is concerned. But I must say, from the little that I know, judging by the executive order, I think some of those fears are already allayed by the provisions in the executive order. What can't be guaranteed is if you come through and you regularize your historical challenges or your historical default, it then behoves that going forward, you come clean and you continue, the compliance cycles.
So who would you say is the bigger winner, the regulators or the people, in terms of the tax amnesty being offered now?
I think it's a win-win, and ultimately, I think the country is the better for it. In terms of the regulator, I think this will open a significant window of opportunity to increase the tax net and get as many people who previously were not in to be part of that. And we're expecting that some significant amount of revenue will come into government cover to defray the cost of running the government. But that's on the government side. The benefit that is on the table for those who will utilize this scheme is enormous. You have, for example, penalties and interest waived for all of the period that is covered. That's something in the range of 30% of what your obligation will be. 10% for default, about 19 or 21% as some states, practically do impose as fines for late payment. So interest at 21%, penalty at 10%. So if you like, 29 or 30% is waived. The period is covered from audit, is covered from investigation. The taxpayer is immune from prosecution, and also guaranteed confidentiality of its information. So from a business perspective, and for me as a practitioner, judging by the amount of time and resource that is required to defend yourself in the case of tax audit and tax investigation, I think it's a significant benefit that the government is putting on the table.